Final. I'm really excited for this match, man. These two guys play such unique styles. In Classic particularly, that confidence when he said he knew he was a better player than Pult, one of the best TVP players in the world last week at the BlizzCon opening weekend.
Yeah, I really feel that this tournament is almost for Classic a way to show the world, like, hey, I'm still here and I matter. Like, did you guys forget that I won GSL Code S just a couple of months ago? It's like suddenly everybody looks at me at this tournament and says that I am not going to win or I am not going to go very far, which is crazy because 4 or 5 months ago we did have a lot of hype around Classic. But yeah, he did. Falling off is always such a big word because if you win GSL Code S, I guess the only thing you can do is fall off because you know, like, it doesn't really get much better than that unless you win here, of course. And it's been a little quiet around him, but he's still so good.
Yeah, well, it's time to kick things off, guys. We're loaded into Nimbus for map number 1. In the top left position, the red Protoss player representing SK Telecom, he is Classic.
And on the right top side of Nimbus, we have our different Protoss player, Nate. Representing CJ Enters, it is herO.
It's an awesome setup that we've got here for this tournament, Kev. And I guess the first things first, well, we got a Roddy build.
Yes, we do, but it's still possible, Nate. In Legacy of the Void, they won't exist anymore, but now you can still do it. The good old 11-gate opening. What does this mean? Well, it can mean a lot of things. You get access to your cybernetics core quicker, so that means a potential faster Stargate or a Twilight console, but the majority of the time, these Protoss players, they will just open up 1 gate and then add 2 more gates and put on some serious gateway pressure. We already said this. This is such a popular map for Protoss players to go 1 gate fast expand. Well, if your other opponent opens up with a straight 3-gate pressure, it's very difficult. Yes, you have 1 photon overcharge, but it doesn't cover everything. So you can already start taking high ground as the 3-gate player and try to take things from there. So we'll see where herO takes it, but it promises to be a pretty aggressive opening.
Yeah, I mean, Classic's opening doesn't look too far off. Just that gateway is just a slight bit later. So if herO wants to go for this, as you mentioned, this very fast tech play, either Warp Gate or potentially a Stargate, what on this map do you think he wants to use this for? Because if you assume your opponent goes just a gateway expand, I feel like you have a big aggressive advantage.
Yeah. It would, like, although everybody mentioned Phoenixes, but I still feel that Classic loves his Dark Templars, and if you love it on smaller maps, there's really no reason not to love it on a bigger map like Nimbus, because you would say the chance of it getting scouted is a little smaller, and the chance of you hiding a pylon around the map is larger. So I wouldn't be surprised if it is Twilight. Look at herO, by the way. He's just rushing up to the Stargate. So now I think he's hoping that the other player is building a Stargate as well, and this is where things get really fun, Nate.
Oh, man.
This is a massive scout, by the way.
If you don't have this, if you don't have a defense prepared, things can fall apart very quickly. But since both players go for the Stargate, herO knows that if he opens up with an Oracle, he runs the risk of Classic opening Phoenix. And then the Oracle doesn't do anything, you're just behind in the Phoenix Wars. What's the best move for herO since Classic doesn't know what he's up to?
The best move for herO is Chrono Boost out as many Phoenixes as you can and prevent Classic from scouting, because eventually Classic will fly across the map. Obviously in the dream scenario it's an Oracle, but I don't think Classic is going to open up with an Oracle because Stargates are so popular here that Phoenixes is just a much safer option. But if you're herO, it is such a nice position to know that this is going to be Stargate versus Stargate, because scouting is hard right now. If you're Classic, this probe should not get into the main base. This probe from Classic will not see the Stargate, but of course herO has the luxury of sending his probe in the right direction, so he does know. And it's not a massive advantage. It all depends on how Classic is gonna, you know, micro this Phoenix or how he's gonna go at it. He's gonna have to be very careful. He can't lose it. If you lose 1 Phoenix in PvP, that is not fun.
I mean, when you're building them at the same rate and they move so fast, it'll snowball very quickly. And as you said, herO being able to deny the scouting puts Classic in an awkward position if he runs out.
Oh, he's going to try to get his Phoenixes on the left side of this Phoenix from Classic. I thought he saw it or caught a glimpse. Oh, if this Phoenix... Okay.
Oh, if he got the reinforcement, that's a big win. Phoenix don't win fights by small margins.
Okay, the Mothership Core is here, so the Phoenixes from herO will reveal themselves. It's 3 against 2. Classic has to back off. And now, Nate, I think you're going to expand immediately. There's a probe behind enemy lines. that doesn't happen normally, as we do have 1 more pause. But this is a really interesting scenario, and I can't wait to talk about it more. Of course, we're going to hold back now because we want to make sure that the players are wearing their headsets, so we don't want to go too in-depth yet. but this is promising to be a pretty fun game.
Yeah, this is, you know, when we looked at the map pool going into the final season of WCS, which would of course end up being the map pool for this tournament, Nimbus was, you know, it was kind of close in a weird way to Altazim Stronghold, in that you have that pocket base, but being on that high ground, the big exposure to drops, and, you know, in this instance, you could say the Phoenix play. I really feel like this is kind of forced Protoss players to really think about the builds, because you can't really do the same thing that you would, you know, say doing like a map like King Sejong Station on the map so big without those big cliffs to blink up.
Nope, it makes a massive difference. And herO, like we said before, he loves his blink stalkers, but on this map it's just kind of hard to pull it off. So it seems like we are back into the game. This is the first map of the second quarterfinal of the day. Of course, we have 2 more series after this, an amazing TVT and a great PVZ, but for now all eyes are going to be on this PvP. herO dropped his expand a little bit quicker, so obviously you love that. And we see Classic is banking up the minerals for it as well. Oh, that's interesting. That's very interesting.
So, I mean, I get the impression that you send that scouting probe in, you know that there's not, like, you know, quote unquote, there's not a natural. So perhaps what Classic wants to do is to fake herO out into thinking that he's just adding gateways instead of going for an expansion.
Yeah, there is actually a popular play where it's Phoenix against Phoenix. One guy just makes a bunch of gateway units and actually tries to end the game. You want to be always very careful. It should be the same amount of Phoenixes, right? Actually, the one of Classic was a little bit later, so his secret will be revealed, correct? Yes, it will be revealed.
And that's a very important scout, because it gives herO a little bit of that defensive luxury as far as knowing what his opponent's up to. But he actually, it seems like he's cut a couple of probes to make this just in case.
Yeah, exactly. I think he was a little bit paranoid, Nate. I think you were spot on. And he just waited, and now he's actually down 4 or 5 workers. And in a Phoenix War, where nothing has really happened yet, he did add 2 more gateways, actually. Maybe some of the resources went into that from here, because I believe Classic is still on how many gateways?
Well, you don't have force fields to defend this, right? So if you bring the gateway units out as herO, you have a huge attack point to go at this base. I mean, the Phoenix trade a couple of blows, a probe killed here and there, and despite the fact that herO started chronoing out probes, he still built this pylon, and it looks like he does want to get aggressive here.
He has extra gateways. I believe he has more gateway capacity than Classic has. He's able to produce more units. That's what I'm trying to say. Of course, he has to be very careful. Can't fight in range of photon overcharge. Not when you have the same amount of Phoenixes. But this is a very awkward position for Classic. Like, this is not how you want to defend your natural, Nate.
I really like keeping the Stalker here as an anchor, because when the Phoenix count is so close, things can get really dicey. But if you have them there, you get that little bit of extra damage. Of course, the Sentry's useless since the Phoenix can kill it super fast. A Zealot comes in to help soak up some hits, and he's moving in on top of these Phoenix. The Stalker's helping to target fire down. And I mean, it looks like herO's getting the better trade here as far as the Sky Battle goes.
It's very close. Yeah, he is actually up 2 Phoenixes, which surprised me a little bit. Almost gives me the idea that Classic has not been chrono boosting out non-stop, because I don't think that had to happen. It felt like photon overcharge did help a little bit there. Of course, that Zealot, like you mentioned, Nate, was tanking. Now these Stalkers are kind of trapped between enemy lines, especially because photon overcharge is still active.
Yeah, can't really get close to that Nexus. Of course, the one at the natural expansion should have gone away by now, so these Zealots are able to get in and get some additional harass. And meanwhile, behind all of this, herO is happily mining away with some probes at his natural, so he's getting that, slowly building up that economic advantage despite delaying his probe production.
Yeah, this is starting to be pretty awkward. Classic has way more workers though, so if he would ever stabilize, he's in a really good position. These Phoenixes are getting very scary close to each other. The 2 Stalkers are helping out a little bit, but I believe that the Phoenix number for herO is just too high.
Yeah, this is fantastic, taking out the air forces of his opponent, lifting up the Stalkers. Of course, the Zealots have more than enough hit points to take fire from the Stalkers and the Mothership Core, and you lose your natural. You can't really afford to build a Nexus, because you need to keep warping units in to stop herO.
Now, this is going to be extremely difficult now for Classic to bounce back. He's down in Phoenixes, he's down in army supply. He does still have way more workers, and he would love to just fight with 1 more photon overcharge, but I don't think that herO is going to give him that chance, and losing this Nexus, that's catastrophic. Losing more Phoenixes here as well. Excellent play there by herO.
Yeah, I mean, without the energy for the photon overcharge, all he can do is keep his Mothership Core parked on his Stalkers, and there's just not enough of them. Lifts up the last forces, and herO will take game 1 of our second quarterfinal.
Some fancy moves there in game number 1 on Nimbus. Phoenix versus Phoenix is something that's very tricky to play out. Classic tried to fake out herO, but that kind of backfired.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cool play when you put that Nexus somewhere you're not expecting it, and then he got what he wanted out of it, and that was to force what could be perceived as a defensive play by herO, delaying his pro production. He was way down on workers, as you mentioned, but then you also lose the defender's advantage that Nimbus gives you. There's a reason why we say it's a good expansion map, And it's not because of that low ground position.
No, that is not the reason, guys. Normally your expand is a little bit easier to defend. And I really think, in a weird way, this all goes back to the opening. Quicker gateway means quicker Stargate, means slightly more Phoenixes. And if Classic would have had the exact same amount or even slightly more Phoenixes than herO, then he would have been able to push those Phoenixes back. And his secret would have been a secret for much longer than it actually was. Because now it felt like herO was having map control in a weird way, without them ever fighting, without them ever killing each other. But he always just had one more Phoenix, and that's why he was able to get a little adventurous with them, and he was able to sneak in there, and he saw like, hey, your Nexus is going down on low ground. Well, all right, I did stop producing workers, but I did add extra gateways, so let me just try to do something about this. And it was a risky play, because if herO didn't win the game right there and then, you could say it's almost game over. If he loses a Phoenix battle and he's down like 10 workers, it's absolutely curtains, but it was beautiful execution of his build.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that point, especially because you still have that pocket base, and once the opposing Protoss player is trying to play catch-up just from behind, you could almost say that with the probes he didn't build, he kind of had to make that pressure work. So it was a very good play, the way that Classic set everything up, but just not quite prepared for the follow-up. It was almost as if he hadn't anticipated that herO might just attack him.
And you know what's one of the things that's the coolest about this play? Now we're getting really in-depth, but those are the small things that are kind of cool. Since herO always had one Phoenix more, he knew it was going to be extremely difficult for Classic to scout his base, because how do you normally scout? You could say hallucinations, but the sentry costs gas, and right now in that phase in the game, you don't want to spend your gas on sentries, you want to make more Phoenixes. But if you're down Phoenixes, you're also not going to fly across the map, because you take the risk of losing your Phoenixes. So it was very, very difficult for Classic to figure out what herO was doing, and those are the small things that sometimes do make the difference on this level. And I really think that actually helped herO in his decision to go for the build that he went for, and just the awesome execution.
Yeah, keeping the build a secret, even at the very beginning, is so crucial for Protoss versus Protoss. We're moving on to a two-player map, though, King Sejong Station, and arguably, Rotterdam, for a Protoss versus Protoss, it's much easier to get those scouts. There's a little bit less randomness because you don't end up scouting all the way around the map and not finding your opponent's base.
Yeah, exactly. He did get pretty unfortunate with that, especially when you're both doing the same build, but one guy knows and the other one doesn't. It's definitely tricky in PvP, but like I said, this is going to be a two-player map. This is also going to be a map, though, that is fantastic for Blink Stalkers, and we know the Blink man loves his Blink Stalkers.
Yeah, looking to see